Welcome to the AV-42C Cockpit Familiarization Tutorial. Get comfortable by adjusting your seat down here, up and down, and the throttle handle over here, up and down, forwards and backwards. The same can be done with the stick over here, up and down, forwards, backwards, left, and right. This can be done automatically right here by pressing this button. When the light is green, grabbing the joystick repositions it. Remember, more than 3 shakes and you're playing with it. Pressing the button again, turning the light off, the joystick functions as expected. Now, onto the left side panel. Here we have the auto trim pitch switch, and above that is the stability augmentation system switches to keep us stable during non-VTOL flight. Above that is the flight assist master switch. You can turn that off if you're feeling brave. Next up, we have the MP3 streaming panel so you can play your own music. Here's the reaction control system keeping us stable during VTOL flight, and the radar warning receiver, which links to that panel there. Next up is the countermeasure system, flares and chaff switches, and the fuel port for aerial refueling, which will link up with that fuel flow gauge right there. The launch bar is for doing catapult launches off of the carrier, and the hook is for doing tow hook landings onto the carrier. We have our flaps and our gear levers located there. Here we have the 3 MFCDs, or multi-function color displays, which we'll toy around with later. On the top left, we have the missile warning and the launch warning, right next to the radar warning receiver that we briefly looked at earlier. On the right side, we have our fuel panel and the fuel flow gauge we looked at a moment ago. Here we have the Hud Power, which works as expected, and the Hud tint dial, and the Hud brightness dial. We have the master caution, which you can click that to turn that off, and the altitude mode, which changes from sea level to radar to detect the ground height versus your altitude. The clear waypoint button will clear any waypoint you have set. Speaking of which, hitting the nav button will turn the autopilot on to your next waypoint. The heading will keep you flying straight, so you don't go left or right. The hover mode helps you hover when you're in VTOL mode, and the altitude mode keeps your altitude so you don't dive or pull up. Here we have the Hmcs switch for the helmet mounted cueing system. When you bring your hand up to the side of your helmet and hit the button, it'll bring your visor down. With the Hmcs turned on, you can see that the HUD will follow me around as is displayed on the visor. Down below, we have the master arm switch to arm your weapon system, and the jettison switch with the selection buttons underneath. Off to the right, we have the left engine switch with the RPM gauge, the right engine switch with the RPM gauge, and the APU generator switch with the RPM gauge currently revved and supplying power to our systems. Speaking of power, we have the main battery switch just below, which is also used to help power our systems. To the right, we have the comms volume dial here, and below that we have the brake lock switch and the cargo bay doors switch. On the top left up here, we have the external lights for navigation, strobe, and landing lights. To the right, we have our internal lights panel for the label brightness, labels, cockpit, and bay lighting. This concludes the cockpit familiarization tutorial for the AV-42C. However, in the event of emergency, the ejection handle is just between your knees here. Goodbye.